It's Michael McBride, host and I guess producer and editor of Veritas Views. Welcome back. Today's episode is one that's built around a theme that quietly runs a lot of our lives. What your brain does when it doesn't have enough information. You get a vague text from somebody you love, no context, no tone, just a short message that feels loaded. And suddenly your mind starts writing a screenplay and it's never a rom-com. You get pulled into an am I the asshole kind of situation where the facts are clear, but emotions are muddled. A couple is trying to make a practical decision about a rental property, and underneath it is a much larger, harder question. Who gets protected? Who gets prioritized? And what happens to aging parents if the dominoes fall the wrong way? And then there's the moment so many of us recognize a supervisor asks for a meeting soon with no explanation. Dr. McBride shares a version of that experience and what it does to your nervous system when your brain has to sit in uncertainty and wait for the rest of the story. Across all three of these segments, the issue is not that you're too sensitive, it's that the ambiguity is a blank space, and the brain hates blank spaces. It fills them, usually with threats and usually fast. So we're going to unpack why that happens, what it costs, and what you can do in the moment to keep your brain from turning not enough data into definitely catastrophic. Let's get into it. One of the new segments I came up with is called Unpack That Text. So I thought I would see what you guys do at this. And the idea is like, I'll take a vague or loaded or emotionally suspicious text message and decode what's actually going on underneath it. At least that's what you'll do, hopefully. Wow, does that sound like something you can do?
Probably. We do it in our office frequently enough.
Let's take a shot. I'm willing to take
Right.
a crack at it. And if it sucks, and we'll not use it, right?
Yeah. So this is kind of like the Am I the Asshole ones. I went out and I found somebody who had shared this. So I have a little bit of feedback and some of the stuff from the internet. So I'll give you what they said. And I made it a little bit more discreet by removing some of the details. But my sister texted me last week, "Can we talk later? No emoji, no details, no punctuation, just dread in a sentence."
Dun dun
Immediately,
dun.
immediately I panicked, my stomach dropped, and I started scanning our last conversation, trying to figure out if I had offended someone or missed something important. I even checked her social media to see if there was something bad that had happened that I had missed. 4 hours later, she called about planning our dad's birthday. Nothing serious at all. When I told her the text scared me, she said, "Wow, you must have been stressed, like I was the problem." But she sends text messages like this all the time, vague, abrupt, emotionally confusing. My friends say the message was neutral and I overreacted, but I'm wondering, like, is this common? Am I reading too much into it?
Well, I would say if it's coming for your sister, I think, first and foremost, my gut here says you've got to think about not just your audience when you're speaking, but the speaker and how they communicate. And in this case, it sounds like this is just MO for the sister.
Yeah. I mean, but I also want to say, is it common? Yes. Are you
Right.
overreacting? Yes. I mean, it's like the one-to-one your boss puts on your schedule for next week. It's like, with the quick fire of the email, "Hey, could you let me know what the agenda is for the meeting so I can prepare for it?" Which really means I'm terrified about this meeting. Can you please assist me to become less terrified? I don't think that's an unusual response. I do think what we want to do is, and Gail, it's coming probably. We want to assume positive intent. And it may be appropriate to say, like, especially for the sister, you can go, okay, this is what she does.
Right, right.
But
No, I totally agree with you. Assume positive intent or no nefarious intent, right? Leave it
yeah,
as sort of a blank slate because that's how it's delivered. And I actually, by the way, I think I have a really good confessions from the couch maybe segment
that
about this. So
applies. That applies.
it applies, and I think we're just going to save that little nugget for a different
Sure.
segment. But I think in this case, because of who is sending the text and that kind of typical crypticness, assume at least
Hmm.
neutral intent here. But I think you're right. I think we do really very normally jump to this awful
Hmm.
catastrophizing, because in this day and age, we put emojis in a text message to soften it or create, some intent or something like that. So, I mean, I get why she did it. I think my only thought here is because it's the sister and this is how she does
Right.
the thing, then, you know, you just know we all have
Right,
that family member who calls and they want you to call back, but they don't leave a voicemail. There's just
and
a pattern that you follow, and it's because it's that person.
right, and to some degree, our brains are hardwired to look for danger.
Absolutely. I
And
was
if our
talking about
brains are hardwired to look for
right.
danger and we get an ambiguous text, we have to maybe push back on that in our own heads and say, wait a second, this is an ambiguous text. It probably doesn't mean this. It might, but it probably, and to like not necessarily run down that path of trying to figure it out. We could always ask, like, what's this? She could have responded, like, what's the topic? Oh, dad's birthday. Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It
diffuse
wouldn't
it
have
really
been,
quickly.
it would have been a really quick conversation if she was really nervous. But being aware that we do tend to look for negatives or look for danger, that skews our judgment.
Yeah.
I think generationally too, there's a difference, right? In the way people text communicate. I know like punctuation can seem daunting if it's there, like if it's a proper sentence or something like that, people read into it. One of the things that
The lack of punctuation changes the meaning entirely.
Yeah, apparently, what I heard from my young adults is that like the period at the end of the sentence means I'm kind of annoyed with you. So like leave off the punctuation. Unless you're an old person, then they go, oh, it's an old person. Probably.
Oh, no, if you're an old person, then you sent the text, you went, shit, I didn't put in punctuation. So then you add the question mark as the whole separate text.
Right, right,
to make sure that it landed.
right.
Sorry, Marco, we interrupted you.
That's okay. No, but I think one of the interesting conversations that came out of it was, and you guys said this, like, right, the sister, this is how she communicates. If it's the start of a relationship and you're figuring that out, then okay, that's a different kind of thing. But there's that who is most responsible in the thing? Like, if you as the sister always communicate in this way, and your sister know that your sister has a stress reaction to short and abbreviated things, like who should soften their tone, or how should they compromise to get to a point where they communicate effectively?
Both of them.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I think it's on the sister to realize that she's coming off in a way that's maybe freaking people out. But the reality is, OP here needs to also do her own internal work on clearly some underlying level of just kind of heightened anxiety. And perhaps people pleasing and perfectionism, because that kind of jump to, oh my gosh, did I do wrong? Is my sister pissed at me? Sort of smacks of that vigilance to that type of thing. Now, again, I'm not prescribing therapy for this person, but I'm just saying, like, it would do some good to be a bit self-reflective of that pattern for this individual, so that they could quickly, kind of use a tool to walk themselves to a less catastrophized, awful place.
Well, thanks. We'll see if this segment reoccurs. Obviously, there are lots of text to unpack. As you said, there's even just the question mark. And what does that mean, So
Oh no, I mean, like, I'll write a thing. This is how old I am. I'll write a thing, and then I'll realize I didn't tag it as a question mark. So it could be a declarative sentence. It could be a question, and I felt like the recipient needed to know that that was a question and not a statement. And so I'll send a whole nother like question mark. Although I've gotten better at editing sent text and then just fixing it, but I still can't bring myself to text without punctuation.
and as someone who's obsessive about notifications, I see the text come through and then it's changed. And I'm like, am I crazy? Did that just change? And I know it'll say like edit it anyway. Well, that's way too much, but thanks. Yeah, we'll see what else we have in store.
Can we talk about how many people come in and think that not sleeping is just a me thing, a personality trait, or something about their makeup, that I just don't sleep well?
Yeah, I hear it all the time where I haven't slept well. Even my mother said as a kid, I wasn't a good sleeper, as if they're built to be like people who don't sleep. That's just not possible.
And what we have found is that with CBTI, or cognitive behavioral treatment of insomnia, those folks who think that they are just quote unquote bad sleepers can learn how to use their body's natural 24-hour cycle, to use that pressure, that urge to sleep that we all have, and to think differently and behave differently around their sleep, and make sometimes a lifetime of sleep problems better.
Yeah, and the reason I do it is because it's a really targeted treatment. It goes pretty quickly and it's incredibly effective. If you want to learn more, go to our website, veritaspp.com. We'll have a link in the show notes for you.
if you're up for it, I have a AITA for you.
Ooh, I
Oh.
love that.
Excellent. Well, I'll tease the intro and see if you have anything to say immediately off of it. Am I an asshole for refusing to sign my parents' house over to my wife if I die?
That's a maybe, but maybe
Maybe,
not.
but maybe not.
Maybe not.
Say it.
Maybe
Say a
not.
little bit
We don't
more.
have a gut. Pat, sounds like neither Gail nor I have a gut reaction to that. Sometimes we are judging that book by its cover right off the bat.
Right, but I want to know, like, are the parents still alive, and are they living in this house? Is
Have
this a
they been married?
hypothetical? Is this real? Right,
Right.
right. How long has this couple been married? 15 minutes versus 30 years. Like, Michael,
Okay,
give me
Michael, give us more.
context.
You
Sure.
gave us not enough.
All right. I have 2 paragraphs of
They
context
did not
for you.
clickbait this enough.
All right. Back in 2008, my parents lost most of their money and couldn't afford to keep their house. My dad is older and has always been really worried that if something happened to him, my mom would have nothing. And he didn't want her to ever have to rely on me or my sister financially. So he came up with a plan. We found a property with a big lot that I bought under my name using a significant amount of my parents' savings for the down payment, and to build an ADU, accessory dwelling unit, for them. That's something I've never heard of before, but I'm deeply curious about.
Oh, I think it's code for mother-in-law apartment or mother-in-law.
No. It's an
No?
external. No, these are kind of cool actually. I'm surprised I went down this rabbit hole before Michael did. It's an external building that is on your lot.
Right. No, and I know the mother-in-law is often attached, but I guess in my brain, I think that they could be attached as well. Right.
Yeah,
So you have a
yeah.
small unit
Okay.
on the property.
On the property.
Yeah.
I always thought of mother-in-law as that apartment over the garage or in the actual place, but
It probably, in fairness, that's how it's more commonly used. But in my head, it exists as an ADU as well.
look at how well we resolve our disputes.
Right? Just talk it through. Have the conversation.
Just talk it through. Have the conversation.
You truly are a model for people to follow.
We are. But that's because it's a business partnership and it's easier.
Oh my God, Dan!
No,
if
in
we
all
were married.
seriousness, with our couples, what happens is they get caught in the emotionality of it. Like when your feelings are a little bit hurt, or you think your business partner or friend has hurt your feelings, like you can deal with it, but when it's your partner, like your life partner, the emotionality of it makes it so hard to step back from that.
Well, I think because we personalize it so quickly, it feels really deeply like about us when lots of times that thing is about the other person and completely and entirely.
And we see that when we do couples counseling all the time, and I think people think fairly often, I get along with so many people in the world. Why can't I get along with my partner? Why can't I get along with my husband or wife?
It must be them.
It must be them. And a big part of the reason is your emotions are so caught up in it that you can't take a step back and go, oh, okay, I get it. My bad.
Yeah.
So,
but we should go back to Michael's thing.
we should.
But
What an opportunity to talk about couples counseling rabbit holes and why people get so pissy with each other.
And to
Please, Michael, tell the story.
Tease up some of the conversation you're probably going to have here in a little bit as well. So, okay, so here's the rest of it. I lived in the main house at first, and they moved into the ADU. The agreement was when I moved out, we'd rent the main house. I'd cover repairs and maintenance on that part. They'd take care of the unit, and we'd split the remaining property taxes not covered by rent. It's worked out pretty well. They have long-term housing security, and I've built solid equity in an investment property. The house is in a trust that passes to my parents if I die, and eventually to my partner or any kids once they're gone. But now my wife wants me to change the trust so that the deed would go directly to her instead. She says she'd still let my parents live there, but wants control of the property if I passed. That makes me uncomfortable because even though the house is legally mine, I think of it as something my parents built. It's their money that made it entirely possible. What also makes me hesitant is that when we got married and updated our life insurance, she pushed hard for me to make her the sole beneficiary, but refused to do the same for me, keeping her sister as her 100%. That left a weird taste in my mouth. So now I wonder, am I the asshole for refusing to sign the house over to her?
No. I was a little bit on his side, and then all of a sudden he throws in that last little bit, and it's like, oh.
Right? It's like this big shove in terms of the continuum. Like, shit. Yes.
I was waffling on this story. I'm like, well, I can, and this is one of those, it seemed up until the end. Can we delete that last little bit where she just delete that for a moment.
Yeah, the life insurance part, you mean, and
the life insurance.
The discrepancy between the.
I can totally see him wanting the whole purpose of this was for his parents to have security and for him wanting his parents to have ultimate security until they die, and then it goes to his wife. I totally see her perspective, and I see her perspective of I don't want to be stuck in a situation where I'm beholden to my in-laws until they die. So I get that. Like that seems to me like it's two differing perspectives where each is looking out for their own best interests. So I'm
I
waffling at this point until the
I
end.
sort of I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think I understand it a little bit different.
Okay,
That's
go.
fine. Here we go. An opportunity for conflict that Dr. Kessler and I are going to navigate with. I hear you, and my perspective is different. We can tee this
Not but,
conversation up. So
not
this
I
is a
hear you,
meta
not I hear you,
opportunity.
but my perspective is different. I hear you. And
And my
I'm just
perspective
pointing
is
out what
different.
you would point
Yes.
out.
Yeah, no, no. I love and in there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, I'm not sure if I heard what I needed to hear or I got lost in some of the details. So the parents needed some security in their housing situation. So this son steps in roughly 2008. When does the marriage happen? Is that prior to 2008 or after?
Hmm.
That's a really good question. I don't see it in the initial post, but let me see if I can find it in the
Okay, because
questions and
some
I'll
of
get
that
back to
makes
you.
a little bit of a difference,
That-
and
yeah.
I think problematically here too, because this individual, the OP's name is on the property. State rules may supersede some of what they can do here, but so
Right.
pending any state laws, right?
Yeah.
We're just
We're just
talking
gonna
about
we're just
human
yeah.
relationships
Right.
here. Human relationships is this son made a decision, a collaborative decision with his parents to provide security. He sounds like he,
Hmm.
for the most part, used their assets and maybe his credit history and ability to maintain this and create
Hmm.
the stability to create this plan. Now,
Right.
sort of regardless if the wife was married to him or not, I sort of feel like reverting that 100% to her is problematic
Hmm.
because if he does not outlast the parents and it's his name, then it goes to her and then she has to deal with the in-laws, but they also have to deal with her, and that's for shit. So I think in that case it needs to go to the parents. If the parents are gone and now
But
they're just
then,
renting this
but
property, then I think it may be a different issue.
so devil's advocate, I'm gonna argue back
Yeah, yeah.
here. What if the parents say, I don't like my daughter-in-law anymore? Let's say he drops dead and they say and now she's got no place to live.
I think there needs to maybe be a buyout clause
Yeah.
because initially it was
What
their assets that
but
made
from a
this work.
but
They
from a
can't
legal
lose their
standpoint, not from
their shirt.
not from a legal standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, because these people are arguing about feelings. The wife is saying if from the wife's perspective, those parents could kick her out. What if he
But
dies
they're
and
not living there anymore.
but
He
they would
moved
get the
out.
but they would get oh they she
She's
moved
not
out.
living on the property. She's not dependent on this property in any ways, is what I'm
Oh,
understanding. They're
Michael,
gone.
am I
Lived in
misunderstanding
the
this
main
again?
my
So,
Oh
so the
wait,
story I'm telling myself is
Michael
he
has a
lived
point.
in the main house and then he moved out probably when he got married and now they're renting this and the parents live in this
Uh,
other on-site dwelling.
Michael,
what
you have a
Gail
point.
said. So, the agreement with his parents occurred prior to the marriage. So he had the
Oh,
property arrangement with his parents, and then yes, Gail, he moved out, and they
he did.
rented. They were renting that main house on the property. The parents still living in the smaller ADU, and
Who's
so
getting the rental money then?
they're.
Probably going to
You keep
property
asking good
taxes.
questions. I don't know, Dan.
Well, I mean, these are I here's what I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to see both of them as having some reasonable self-interest here to protect. And they're caught in the everyone's caught in the this is the way it has to be instead of like what is the way that makes this work so all of us get our needs met.
Yes. And I totally agree with that. Like, and if they were sitting in our office, we would be asking these questions and trying to take it
Right.
apart and then put it back together so that the beneficiary ship, if that's a word,
Yeah.
reflects the agreement as it more or less stands now so that people get their needs met. I
Hmm.
think my concern and the alarm bells go off because I have heard of these situations where this is a later in life marriage, whether it's a second marriage or just simply a later in life marriage. An arrangement, a financial arrangement has been made, but each member of the couple comes to the relationship with some assets sort of in
Yeah.
hand. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, well, not always, but yeah, unfortunately, one spouse can say, "My assets are mine and they belong to me and my family, my kids, and that's the way it needs to go." And you go, "Sure, that makes sense, right?" But your assets, when they come to me, I'm going to distribute them among my kids. And
Sure.
that's where
Sure.
people get some really hurt feelings to say, like, no, 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 no. I have family over here that I want that to be dispersed to as well. Well, no, they become my assets. And that's where I am really concerned about this funneling that she's got going,
Right. Right.
especially because she's leaving her sister on as beneficiary. So it really feels like it's
That
tilted in her direction in a way that I am really uncomfortable with.
I will say, like, now adding back in that last bit,
Yeah.
that really troubles me. That the couple that she is making her sister the beneficiary, and now I'm willing to hear that there might be a good reason for that.
Sure.
Um, sister is in some way impaired and needs to be cared for,
But what
or
about these poor parents? Same thing.
sure,
Elderly, vulnerable.
but
They
this
need
is life.
stable
But this is
housing.
the life insurance is separate. The life insurance is.
But it's
I'm not
still an asset.
right. No, no. But saying that she wanted the part that I thought was a real dick move was saying you need to make me your sole beneficiary, but I'm going to make someone else my sole beneficiary.
Yes, absolutely.
And
That's a dick
it
move.
makes me not makes me not. I don't feel comfortable with her because that feels icky.
Yeah. I think in our office, if we were having this conversation,
Mm.
this couple very well could walk through the door, right? You would be saying, like, okay, I think I really need to understand this, right?
Right.
This is not a traditional arrangement. Help me get there. And that, man, that's going to be a tense
Right.
conversation because
And
he's going to be over there fuming and she's going to be
sure.
there like justifying.
And
And again, maybe to your point, like it's perfectly reasonable, but man, I will tell you as a therapist, I sit there and I just have to like
and this is the piece
a
like
lot of
it's really
discomfort.
interesting because
Mhm.
we get like in that situation, the temptation is to do like Judge Judy and try to figure it out and say who's right and who's wrong. But the reality of our work with that person is going to be that we're going to help them to work through the conflict, even if we think that someone is like, I mean, unless it's abusive, obviously, but there's certainly situations where I think this is not reasonable and you're asking your partner to do this thing that's not reasonable and your partner's considering you're talking about it and you're navigating and I'm not talking about anything tragic or terrible or whatever. There are times where I have a very strong opinion and my
Mhm.
job isn't to give them my opinion. No,
Right.
dude, what do you ask? That's not reasonable. But to say, okay, how do we work this out? How do we in here use this as a template for resolving conflict?
Yes. Michael.
So I dug through the comments and the clarifications. Unfortunately, this is one where the OP was generous in responding to comments. So the rent money is used, it pays property taxes first, and then whatever is left gets split 2/3 to the son because he also does maintenance and upkeep on the property, 1/3 to the parents. So that's
Hmm.
what's happening with the rental property
A
money.
very reasonable arrangement. Now the question is, have they written out what happens should he die to the rent money? Does it does it go now all to? I mean, this stuff. It sounds like they haven't like done their due diligence.
And I think I'm coming back to Dan, if you remember the episode in season 2 when we talked with
Gotcha.
Dr. You will, maybe. I listened to the rerun the other day when we were on a break. We reran some episodes, specifically the ones with a guest, and Dr. Sheena Sikorsky was with us. And we were talking about a young woman who, I think she was 27, and she knew she had a terminal illness and she was planning her funeral. And we were really wrestling with these ideas. Yeah, right.
Ah,
Who
yeah, yeah.
like
Okay,
what
I
do you
remember
do
that.
after
Yeah,
death?
that
And
was that
how
was
do
it.
you plan for these things ahead of time? And do they have to respect this afterward? And this has a little bit of a flavor of that. This, we've made this arrangement, perhaps even before
Mhm.
this wife was a part
Yeah,
of the picture, and now she's wanting this to be changed. And it sounds like she is really framing her needs above all else.
Hmm.
Really, it sounds like pushing for this change. And I think that the level
Yeah.
of the push is uncomfortable. I think when something like this is set and is
Hmm.
in motion before you enter the relationship, I would love to see, and this is that biased opinion that I would have to hold in the therapy room, right? I'd love to
Hmm.
see someone be a bit flexible and understanding that part of the baggage, if you will, part of what you marry into is this arrangement, and
Right.
it isn't yours to change. And, it's yours to reconcile and sit with and be uncomfortable with, but to not count on
Yeah.
your
And
and your file.
I have some questions about whether this is even like, can you will something to someone and then have it willed to the other person without the security of that person willing it back? And it's a weird arrangement that they're doing, that probably needs to be revisited, both from a legal standpoint, and lawyers, please let us know,
Right.
and
Well,
from an emotional, personal standpoint.
and what we don't know is if this OP passes first, if there are siblings that then the assets would go to for the parents. Like it's
Yeah,
all sorts of messy. And again, I
did
think
they
real estate law may supersede any of this.
I mean, did they DIY this shit, or they actually have like a because like also like I asked for lawyers to comment, but like even more so, like dudes, if you're doing something complicated, you probably should like you can have a lawyer involved, and if you can buy the house, you can probably find a, it sounds like something is missing here.
You're
Yes,
touching
great.
on one of the big topics that people talked
Mm.
about on the in the comments, which is doesn't really cast judgment, but it's the question of like what happens, like when you get married, you should reassess all the things that you have, right? You're like your agreements.
Hmm.
And this sounds like a case where there was this thing on the side that either she wasn't fully aware of how it operated
Hmm.
or didn't think it would be a big deal. And then now it is for some reason become a big deal.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a significant amount of rent money coming in. Some people kind of wondered, if it's a money thing or, is he
Yeah.
expressing health problems?
Is there a lot of, did he invest a lot of money that is sort of in effect their money, even though it was done beforehand? Like, does he have a substantial outlay in this that she's concerned about? I don't know. It,
And
there's a lot
solvable.
here.
But what she's wanting to do, it feels like, is separate and create that barrier between herself and the parents.
Right.
And we don't understand why that
We
barrier
don't.
is
We
is
don't.
trying to get thrown up here. I think the thing that feels that icky piece of it is really because she's not doing for him in kind what she's asking of him.
Yeah. I have to say, if I'm going to render a verdict here, I'm at not enough information. I'm not happy with her, with
Yeah,
the spouse as described, but I'm still at not enough information.
I
Is
would
that a cop out?
agree. I mean, a little bit, but I think you're right. I think there isn't enough information, and I'm going to go on record as saying, like, I want something between not enough information and she sucks, because, like, because I'm really not happy about her difference in how she's treating these life
Agreed.
insurance policies.
Agreed.
That makes me uncomfortable. And in my experience, and I
Hmm.
have had this come up, it is a way to put in a wedge, and it often feels more like about the money and the
Hmm.
asset gathering rather than a caring, loving, purposeful, like
Yeah.
I am providing for my disabled sister kind of thing. So I think we're in the same spot here, Dan. We're not comfortable. We want to know some more information. I don't know, Michael, is there anything else that the internet's going to say that's going to change our mind?
I don't think so. But the one kind of thought experiment, how you guys often
Mm.
massage the facts, right? Is okay, forget about her beneficiary thing and the way that she has done that. Um, you know, what cards need to go on the table when you are entering into a marriage? Like how much how much is up for they set up for grabs. I don't like that because it's not really up for grabs, but it's like, how how equal does that information
Yeah.
need to be, and that sharing and transparency? Is it okay that one person kind of, yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to the conversation we had at one point about how many pots of money you have, right?
Right.
Like if it's splitting that up. And anyway, I don't know if you have thoughts on that. That would be the
I
other
think
one.
anything can kind of be workable. I think at the end of the day, it has to be agreeable. And in order to reach that agreeableness, it needs to be super transparent.
Yeah.
I don't think trying to make things equal or fair is always the order of the day, because
No.
sentimentality comes in. I'm thinking about an inheritance that I received from my grandmother, and I've been really clear it's not going to my boys. I want to keep it in the female line, and so I want to do that. I want to give that to the girls in my family. Now, it's not a
Mhm.
huge asset, but like sentimentality wise, like that's where I want this thing to go.
Yeah.
And I've just been really clear, but it's not really a negotiation because it was given to me. Is it considered marital asset? Probably. Do you want to throw
I
down over that? Maybe, but like
I think it probably is.
it probably is. But the
Michael?
reality is this is a preference. This is what I would like to
Sure,
do.
sure. And but there's so much emotion tied up in this stuff whenever
Yeah.
we're talking about splitting up someone's assets. And
Yeah.
I just want to put my plug in there for like someone told me about this, and I know I've heard it a number of times since then. Like the mom who, like, as they started taking your stuff down, they noticed that there were stickers on it with each kid's name on it that she had like
Mhm.
gone through, and like these are to so and so, like to and I all of this stuff needs to be talked, and it's hard conversations to have. It's very hard,
Sure.
especially if you want to split something up inequitably. Um, if there is an adult child taking care of a minor child in a situation, an equitable split's not equitable anymore. And there's certain
Right.
situations where we're going to choose to be inequitable, and that's not necessarily wrong or bad.
Right, right. And sometimes you have an adult child that's caretaking the parents, and so the
Right,
parents really want to be able to give something back, and so they give inequitably in that way.
right,
Or, right, or you have an adult child that says, I really want for nothing, and I have a sibling who, needs a lot more or
sure,
enjoys these things a lot more. Please give inequitably.
right.
It's
What
not
is
about balancing that sheet in that same way. It's about doing what works for you in the situation that you were in.
Right. What is equitable may not be equal in this particular case, and
Yes.
that is a we could make arguments for fairness that in a bunch of different directions, and
Yeah.
this is one of
Yeah.
those times where if people can sit down and have those conversations thoughtfully,
Hmm.
but it's really hard to do.
It really is.
Really hard to do.
So, as usual, your analysis is much more nuanced and thoughtful. The internet pounced all over the wife, having put her sister down as
Yeah.
beneficiary, and the very few people. So, like, it was overwhelmingly not the asshole for the OP.
Hmm.
The few people who came to defend the wife said, if her husband passes and he is even half of the income of the house, she needs protection for her future going forward as well. And, so people talked about that, but I agree with, I mean, this felt like one where the OP could not possibly give enough information to really
Right.
get to a point where you could
Yeah.
render a verdict. And I will say he seemed to cherry pick the responses he did. He did not offer clarification
Mm.
with anything to help his wife. So you kind of get the feeling that there's some bitterness there. And, he didn't
Yeah.
say
See,
why the sister or anything like that.
yeah. Am I the asshole for being angry when my friend, it's like people sometimes the fact massaging and the perspectives, it's hard to leave your bias out.
Yeah.
And I that's one of the reasons I think there's not enough information. Like I want to hear from his wife about that. There may be all sorts of explanations I think he's leaving out, but that's purely speculative on my part. I admit that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for both weighing in again. I always appreciate these. It's fun to hear your thought process and the things that you tease out as you go along. Anybody out there, if you have thoughts, please send them here. And if you're the OP, if you recognize yourself in some way in this post, we could require some clarification. It'd be wonderful.
We have
Mailbag
yet
this.
to have had in like our 80 plus episodes, we've yet to have had an OP reach out and go, let me fix this or let me clarify. I would love
Right,
that.
right. Let me add that. So just keep in mind we have a mailbag. We'd love to hear from you. Dan, I swear, every week someone sits down for their very first visit or maybe not even their first visit, and they tell me something like, I feel like I should have it all together by now.
Yeah. Or a lot of the folks I see, it's like I've been told by my partner to come in to get help, or other people have been encouraging me to. And certainly we see this a lot with people. Their lives are busy.
Well, absolutely. And a lot of times people are sitting down with us not because they're broken, but simply because they want to fine tune or just even create a little breathing room in their life.
Yeah, there's this idea that well, I'm not sick enough yet. I'm not problemed enough yet. I'm not like overwhelmed by everything. And we're finding is a lot of folks that come in, they're coming in, as you said, more because maybe life isn't terrible, but it isn't what they want it to be either.
Right.
And then,
Absolutely. And now, if this is in any way descriptive of you, you can come find us. We're at veritaspp.com. That's V as in Victor, ERIT as in Tom, AS, PP as in
psychology
psychologypartners.com.
partners, yeah. A link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
I love saying that. I'm not sure why.
All right, it's time for a brand new segment we're calling Confessions from the Couch. This is where Gail and Dan peel back the curtain and admit that the very human, imperfect, occasionally ironic things that happen even when you're a mental health professional. And I believe, Gail, you said you had one that you wanted to share today.
It's so meta. Ugh. Okay. And I tell this story a lot because I think it's a really good illustration of the tools that we try to teach in therapy. But I had this moment as a therapist, and especially well, I mean, we have electronic medical records, so I've often kept
Mhm.
a computer within my sight line. And one particular day, my computer was up and going, and an instant message crosses the screen. And those can be hard to ignore, right? So I get this instant message from, at the time, the business services supervisor for the office I was working in. And I'm thinking, oh shit, like this is a safety thing. Like she knows when I'm with people. She's not going to bug me or send me an instant message if it's not like mission critical right now. So I look at this message I really, in some ways, I wish I hadn't. And in some ways, I'm really glad that I did. The message said, and I quote, and this has probably been
And
about
I
10
quote,
years now, and I quote, I want to see you in my office before you leave for the day. And
ooh,
I'm sitting there. I got a guy sitting on the couch across from me, and like the whoa shit button like just gets pushed
yeah,
hard, right? So I
yeah.
use this little bit of disclosure to talk about like, okay, if this is what happened, how do you think I felt in this moment? And what do you imagine my clients often tell me?
Uh, Anxiety, fear,
Right,
worry.
scared, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tell them my stomach hit my knees, right? You read this and then you're like, whoa, shit. Of course, the second thought is I've got someone here and I can't lose my ever loving stuffing because I'm the therapist in the room, right? And how do you recover from this like whoa shit moment? Well, you use the tools that we're talking about, right? And so the next thing I said to myself is like, where did this anxiety come from?
Hmm.
Well, it came from the message, but really it came from my perception about the
Right,
message,
right. I was gonna say
depth
when
of
you
the
said it came from the
message.
message, I almost jumped up and went, "Wait a second."
Right, right. What? Tell me, intervene, Dr. Kessler.
It
Where did
it
it come
it
from?
it's your interpretation of the message,
Which
which
was?
was you jumped to a negative conclusion
Yep,
that this was some problem, and you could have chosen to interpret this differently.
absolutely. So I, in the moment, without even thinking about it, I didn't like have a thought process. I just told myself, this is bad. I'm in trouble.
Right.
And then I went, is that true? Right? Is that accurate? What evidence do I have to tell me that this is actually bad?
But we don't necessarily want to assume that it's good either.
Right.
What do you know? What do you know in that situation?
I know? So in this situation, and you're going to love it because this is back when, this is a sub-confession from the Confessions of the Couch. Ooh. This is back when Dr. Kessler was my boss. Once upon a time, many, many, many years ago, he was my hiring manager. And I looked at this message, and you were my boss at the time. And I thought, that's interesting. My boss is not on this thread. Neither is my boss's boss. Neither is HR. How bad can this be if none of these other players are on this message? Now, I admit, again, maybe a sub-confession from the Confessions of the Couch, my second language is trucker and sailor. So could I have said or done something that was a little irreverent and needing some correction? Sure, this is where I can allow for perhaps, right? But the person who sent it to me actually was a friend of mine outside of work, and I don't believe this woman would eviscerate me and, rake me over the coals and threaten my job within an inch of its life. And then I realized the reason I'm friends with her is because she was really good at her job, and I could hand her something and never think about it again, and it would just be magicked and done. So the likelihood that this is bad starts to go down, and the likelihood goes up that she's done something or she's working on something that I had completely forgotten, but she needs my input on.
Right.
And then I realized it's Friday. And at the time I was working half day Friday. So I'd bolt out the back door 4 to 6 hours before she was done with her day. Completely reasonable that she's trying to just tug on my shirt sleeve to say hey, I know you're working a short day. Get your butt in here before you leave. And immediately the anxiety subsides, and it's still a little uncomfortable, but it's sort of then leaning into the curiosity of what could this be? As opposed to freaking out and becoming unproductive.
Right. And even to abbreviate that further, if were I working with someone in this position, or were I to have the same thought myself, and I very well would have, just going to that place of, I actually have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is about. It might be something bad. It might be something good. But what I know right now is that I don't know. And that she wants to talk to me, and that there's sometimes she wants to talk to me about bad stuff, and sometimes about good stuff, sometimes about neutral stuff. And in almost every case, it's been pretty neutral.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so effective, right? Because you can show someone something like this, they can see it and go, oh. Yeah. And I love having an opportunity to pull back the curtain a little bit and say, we use these skills too. Yeah. That's why we can teach them. Right? Because they are useful. So that is my confession from the couch. I use these skills too.
Before we wrap, here's the thread I hope you take away from this episode. Uncertainty is not just a feeling, it is a trigger. And when the brain gets an incomplete signal, it does not wait politely for clarification. It tries to protect you by predicting the worst, because prepared can feel safer than unknown, even if it makes you miserable in the process. That showed up today in 3 different places: the vague message that sends your imagination into overdrive, the relationship conflict where fair and safe are not the same thing, and the workplace moment where the body reacts before your mind has any real evidence about how or if it should react. The skills we talk about are not pretending everything is fine. They're about slowing the story down long enough to separate facts from forecasts. They're about buying your brain a beat so your next move is chosen, not reflexive. If you want a simple takeaway to try this week, here it is. When you feel that internal spike, ask, what do I know for sure and what am I guessing? Then act on what you know and get curious about what you don't. If this episode hit home, share it with a person in your life who lives in the mental montage. And if you want more of these breakdowns, follow the show and drop a review. It helps people find us. Thanks for spending time with us. See you next episode.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gail McBride at Dr. G. McBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners. Credits: Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing the show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro. I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.